movie to date, some of us who grew up, who are born and raised in Nairobi, captured what we've gone through. And
will replace traditional broadcasters. So just to start with you, Paul, do you think VOD doesn't mean the death of other distribution channels like cinema and TV? Is it complementary or competitive? What's your take on that?
That's a very good question to start with. I know there's lots in the public domain about video on demand will definitely take over from linear. That's been the general view. And I think, let me just start by telling you a little bit of a story, right? So,
okay.
Just to put into context what on demand is like and what it is before I answer the question. This is my typical morning. My daughter, who's 3 years old, comes running into my room at 6 a.m. I don't know how she knows it's 6 a.m., but she's up at 6 a.m. And she comes running, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, daddy." And I'm like, okay, I know what's happening. And she just says, "Phone, I want the phone." I give her my phone, and away she goes. She goes back into her room. She's able to open the iFlix app. She can scroll down, opens the kids section, and she watches Peppa Pig. When I come home in the evening, at 5:30, 6 o'clock, running towards me, "Daddy, daddy, daddy." I'm like, I'm going to get a nice big hug. Phone. All she wants is my phone. So she is the future of our entertainment consumers. She wants to watch content on her terms. She wants to watch content when she wants to watch content. She wants to watch content on what device she wants to watch. We put her in front of a television, and she gets very frustrated. Why? She can't go and... She can't pause it, she can't stop it. She'll sit and watch my little phone for hours on end. I think that kind of puts into context in terms of the power of on-demand at the moment. Will it, now going back to your question, will it be the downfall of linear television? I don't think so. Not in totality. Let me say why. There's always going to be key features that you want to watch in real time.
Okay.
You want to watch news in real time. You want to watch sports in real time. No one's going to go and watch a game, right, a day later than when it actually aired. So there still is a place for linear television. However, the growth on the on-demand platforms is growing at an astronomical rate. Okay. We are seeing declines in traditional viewing. The population of Kenya, for example, 60% of the population of Kenya is under 25 years of age. Okay. These guys have a different culture. They don't watch linear television. They want to watch on their phones. So I don't think we're definitely going to, I think we're complementary more now than direct, competitor to it.
Competition. Okay.
Sorry, just one more thing. We also have linear channels on our platform. And initially that wasn't one of our go-to-market strategies. But we found that there still is a need and a hunger for linear television channels. The difference is, can I watch it where I am now? I don't have to go through the traditional means.
Oh, okay. I'd like to move the conversation to Mr. Robert, but now more from, you sit in a very unique position where you represent the broadcasting station, that's the traditional, but also you're dealing with the digital arm of it. So from a consumer perspective, just maybe from your analytics and backend, are consumers cutting back from traditional TV services, or are they mutually exclusive or complementary but now from a consumer perspective?
Thank you very much, Seth. I think when you look at VOD, it's a reality, and consumers are likely to move there because it offers several advantages. And from what we have noticed ourselves is we haven't really noticed a huge dip. Yes, there could be a dip in linear TV, but it's not significant to say that it has revolutionized the industry at the moment. So we think that in the short to medium term, that linear TV will still have a place, a very strong place. Okay. However, from a consumer perspective, we know that consumers will continue to consume more and more of video services. I can see that for myself in my own house. When I installed Wi-Fi, why the consumption habits of linear TV completely changed almost within a short time. And you can see the impact that has. And so from a consumer's perspective, yes, it has an influence, but also we've got to look at it also from an advertiser's perspective, you know, because advertisers are still looking for opportunities to speak to consumers. And so linear TV will continue to play a role because of the cost it offers advertisers to reach the market. And so in my opinion, it's still here to stay for a while, but we must prepare for the future.
Oh, okay, okay. Yes?
Just on the question on whether VOD will replace TV, I concur with both speakers. The one thing you have to understand is that social media has created us to want to watch something as and when we want to watch it, as and when something is happening. And that is driving the decline in scheduled content, which is what broadcasting is all about. Rightfully, it's very hard to predict into the future whether, you know, to totally do away with broadcasting. But as Paul said, live TV, live news, that still dominates that. And for now, what's happening is that it's complementary to what is happening on live TV. So you have platforms like what you said, they have live news, DSTV now, you have live sport, you can watch on the go, you can watch on the mobile. But what's happening with all these services is that it's a constant pool of attention. So yes, people might want to watch TV, people might want to watch Showmax, or whether it's iFlix, but they also want to be on Instagram. There is an influencer there who's posted a very interesting vlog, whether it's an hour or half an hour. And we know that all the young people here are following multiple influencers. So that's also pulling the eyeballs. So as social media is growing, as other platforms are also growing, these are also competing with video on demand as well, not just broadcasting, the traditional broadcasting. Yeah.
Okay, just based on the answers, I just want to do a very quick poll here. How many of us think that VOD will replace traditional broadcasting? Just raise your hand. Will replace traditional broadcasting. How many of us do not think VOD will complement traditional? So the free-to-airs will be here to stay, and the pay TVs. Wow, very interesting, very interesting. Mr. Michael, based on just what we've said and from the audience, what the audience is saying, but I don't know what you think about the question that I asked.
Yeah, actually, briefly, I agree with what has been said before. I'll just add that I see video on demand also as an opportunity for traditional broadcasters, because for example, we have so many screens in our lives, and those screens have their moments in our daily life. There's a reason why Paul's daughter would want to immediately get on a screen that she can just flick and watch something interesting. But I'm a parent, I also find that there's a time I want also to sit with family and maybe watch some live event that is happening of national importance, and that can only be offered by traditional broadcasting. And as a traditional broadcaster, I also want to make sure that the person who missed the event will also be able to watch it later. Yeah. And therefore, I partner with the traditional, either I have my own VOD platform or I partner with a VOD provider to make sure that my content is also available for someone who wants to reference it in future, even if it's not live content. So I see it in that way, I see it as a complement.
Okay. So now we'll move to the next question, where we want to bring it more now to Kenya. And with the VOD market, there are very many stakeholders. There's a role that the government should play. There's a role that telecommunication companies and ISPs are playing. There's a role that broadcasters are playing. There's a role that digital platforms and websites are playing. There's a role that content producers are playing. So I'll start with you, Mr. Michael, because you're involved in government affairs. So is there anything in particular, especially within the Kenyan context, that we need to do to make the VOD market thrive? Probably from a policy and government perspective, then I'll let the rest of the panelists answer, but I don't know what you think.
Yes, I see three challenges which the government can be a great partner in helping to resolve. The first one is in access, the second one is in education, and the final one is in content. On access, it is for government to invest or incentivize investments in broadband so that as many people as possible are able to access broadband either for consumption or for creating content on demand.
Also to make it cheaper for people to access VOD.
Right,
Okay.
Cheaper, affordable. So a lot of work has been done, to be fair, by the government. But of course, the demand keeps growing, and still more can be done.
Okay.
If the government can't invest itself, and it can ensure, a very fair and attractive policy environment for investment by other players. On education, we need, a lot more to be done in integrating ICT curriculum in our schools. So that young people can understand from a very early age the digital opportunity, the value that it's possible to actually have a productive and fulfilling career as a creative, whether online or offline. And that starts with the question of whether in our primary schools do we have any curriculum that is standard government curriculum that trains young people on the basics of ICT, and later in high school and also at university for them to have that as a staple in their life. And then on content, incentivizing the creation of local content. And I think this is related to both the previous points, and also the fact that we're having this festival and the role that the government is playing in supporting local creatives, and more importantly, for government to release government content. There's a lot of content that is being held by government that needs to be out there for creatives to work with. Historical content, about our freedom fighters, footage from KBC, the first address by Parliament by Jomo Kenyatta. I don't think it's fair for government, if it is doing so, to hold this back as government copyright. But if I was a creative and I wanted to tell a story about Kenya's independence, if I don't have access to this content, which should be in the public domain, then there's no way I'll be able to create a compelling story.
Okay. Same question for Mr. Paul.
It's a very good question. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, it's a very good question. There's quite a few different areas that we have to still improve on. So when we were producing our local Ganya's first production in Kenya, it was a difficult journey. We had this amazing production crew that came out with a concept, but then our international investors have such high requirements in terms of what we have to do. Simple things like having insurance for lost future earnings. That was the requirement from our investors. Never heard of before in the local industry. So we definitely have to do a lot more education in terms of what it takes to meet those requirements from an investor. In addition to education, there's content is key. I mean, Kweza iFlix has done 8 local productions in the first year we've been there. We have 50 scheduled for this year alone, and we have to empower the youth, give them incentives so that they can actually materialize their concepts. They are scraping at the bottom of the barrel, and I think the government can come up with some incentives to try and to encourage and incentivize and to give support for these guys to actually take the product to market. I think all my colleagues will agree that, guys, we get pitched every single day with concepts, right? And we always come back and say, show me the first 13 episodes, right? It's not possible, so some of these things do have to change as well. What is the other area that I wanted to touch on this? Regulation. I think we're not doing enough on regulation. I know it's a very difficult conversation to have, on demand, digital. How do you regulate? How do you not regulate? Where do we fall as OTT players? Are we regulated? Are we not regulated? Classification, everything else. It's a very grey area, but we do need to try and pick up that conversation, because on one side, the internet is an amazing tool, right? That you can use for amazing stuff, but it can also be the devil in itself. So we do have to make sure that we get the regulation right moving forward as well.
Okay, Patrick.
So mine, I'll just stick to one point that's very key to video on demand, and that's connectivity. The fact that without connectivity, internet connectivity, we wouldn't be talking about video on demand. So if I was to stick to one point that government should, and the industry players should work together towards fixing, that is access, like my fellow speakers spoken about. We need to have our youth to be able to access the internet, whether it's for VOD content, whether it's educational content, whether it's entertainment content, Showmax or iFlix or whatever players that there are in the market. It is very important that government looks into that The Big Four agenda should address some of that. Or what I'm recommending is that the Big Four agenda should have included infrastructure building, including PPPs with people like Google, people who are able to fund some of this infrastructure development, not just in Nairobi. I mean, all the good connectivity right now, honestly speaking, is only in the urban areas, Nairobi, partly Mombasa and Kisumu. If you go to Turkana, for instance, there are other priorities that probably they're facing, or other problems they're facing, but connectivity is not there. So if I was to pick one thing that government should look into, is infrastructure in as far as internet connectivity is concerned.
Allow me to bring in Meredith Bill from the African Media Initiative. Welcome. So we're discussing about, is there anything in particular that the stakeholders within the VOD sector need to do? There are very many stakeholders. We've talked about the government, the telecommunication and ISP companies, the broadcasters, digital platforms. We'll talk about the content producers a bit later, but just looking at those different stakeholders who determine the success or failure of the VOD market. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the whole value chain is important. And looking at the globalization and the opportunity to reach way more people than in the past. So everybody has a role, as you're saying. The regulators, copyright enforcement in Africa has been woefully lacking. So the ability for creators to be able to make money, revenue from their creative output is hampered because of that lack. So that's one of the main areas where government can come in, as he was saying, enabling, like investing in gatherings like this. I've seen in counties around the country where they are sponsoring various types of competitions and things which are engaging the young people. Because again, with the 70% of the population being under 30, it's both an opportunity and a challenge of finding something for that demographic to do. And as you were illustrating with the behavior of your child, the changing consumption patterns of the growing public makes you go back to the drawing board and do something different. So the biggest obstacle to video on demand success is internet penetration. And so the faster Wi-Fi is ubiquitous, the more things you'll be able to do that also enable commerce. It's not just the content that you're watching. With these smart boxes, there's opportunities to buy things. You're watching a movie and you pause it and, hey, I like that dress she has on. Where can I get it? And click and do a purchase. So expanding internet penetration in the country is probably the biggest enabler going forward.
Sorry, yes?
Seth, just to mention something, is the whole idea about VOD from a local perspective is also the local content, and local content is what's going to drive local consumption of VOD in Kenya. And so we think about the stakeholders and the investors in this field, and how do we make sure, from a government perspective, how do we create a level playing field such that these investors can actually compete with multinationals, for example, who probably don't pay taxes locally, and who probably don't employ locally, and don't incur much cost in terms of being on the ground, having a footprint on the ground. So I look at government in terms of regulation as well, and how do we address some of those issues that are very key in making sure that actually local producers, film producers, and broadcasting houses, and investors in general will actually have an opportunity to participate in a healthy, competitive environment.
Okay. Now, a lot, just to move on the conversation a bit, you mentioned local content and local content producers. A lot of the people represented here are either producers or work with producers in one way or another, or involved in content production. And fortunately, a lot of the people up here are involved in the acquisition of the content. So a lot of the producers here would want to know, going forward, both from what we've seen from being part of the African Media Initiative, also from the Google perspective, but also from the acquisition perspective, what kind of content seems to be working well for the VOD market? As the producers, as they're thinking about the future and what kind of content to make, from your perspective. So maybe I'll start with Mr. Paul. What kind of content seems to be doing well? Or what should they think about, even as they think about engaging in the VOD market?
Okay, so on QuasiFlix, we currently have 10,000 hours of content available. The bulk of that is Hollywood studio. Our portfolio for regional and local is small in comparison. We do see that as the future to localize. And that's why I said we have like 50 productions scheduled this year alone. Just recap the question.
What would you advise the local content producers? How do they take advantage of this VOD market? Where do the opportunities lie?
Oh, for sure. I mean, guys, listen, content is king. All right? There's such a hunger for content at the moment. You guys actually have the cards in your hands. You know, you have to push it and come. Everybody's looking for content. The content we currently have here is going around its third time and fourth time and fifth time, you know, and it's not as attractive for us anymore. You know, so if you have a concept, work it out. Come and talk to us. You know, as I said in Ghana, we didn't offer a concept, right? We didn't actually wait for 13 episodes, and I think it's paid dividends. So if you believe in your content, push it. Come get some advice from us. You know, we'll direct you in the right area to go. But just be ready for the hard work, right? We're going to ask you, you know, to share your scripts. You know, how far can this series go? How far can the movie? You know, have you thought it through? Have you thought about go-to-market strategy? What are you going to do in terms of funding it? Right, because we're not going to pay for 100% up front. So just be prepared for the hard work that's coming through on that front. But you guys, this is your time when it comes to content. We are looking for it.
Okay. So what you're saying is more than the concept, also think through the script, how the script will go, how it will go to market.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
So just to reiterate what Paul has said, you know, between ourselves and MultiChoice Mnet Productions, we have a lot of local content. So I'll just give you an overview of what's performing very well. So we are privileged to have a lot of local content on Showmax. So shows like Selena, Siuna Johnny are doing very well. They resonate with our audiences. I'm sure they resonate with a lot of you right here. So such kind of shows that talk about Kenyan people, the Kenyan problems that we are facing, those are very important. But having said that, you know, there are things that there are gaps in the market. So for kids content, animations, local animations is not something that you come across quite easily. Educational content, I must say that Tanzanians are right on board on that. You know, educational content from Tanzania is they're quite huge on that, and I don't know whether it's a government initiative. I'm not privy to that. So that's something that I think the local producers need to look into that. And a lot of these platforms want to, in as much as we are doing entertainment content, we want to also have educational content. You know, the dramas that you need to come out with, the stories need to resonate with the Kenyan. You need to understand who your audience is. So if your audience is a global stage, then of course you need to match that content with a global player. If your storyline is a local content, you need to also match yourself with a platform that's targeting local audiences. So it's very important to understand what your storyline is and who resonates with that. So if you're writing a story for Nigerians, you need to understand which of the platforms actually are in Nigeria.
Sorry, can I just add on one small thing? Because I think it's very important. There's a massive hunger at the moment for short-form content as well. So don't only think about doing the series and the movies, but we are desperately looking for 3 to 5 minute clips, you know, of motivational content, educational content, funnies, comedies, sketches, everything else. So guys, you don't have to think that it's beyond your scope at the moment. We're changing the mindset of how people actually consume content in Kenya and Africa. And if you think about traditionally, guys will go to YouTube, they will watch 5 minutes and they will leave. Now they're being presented this opportunity to go and watch 23 minutes, pay for data, pay for subscription. You know, it's still hard to get that person to actually change their mindset and do that. So there still is massive scope for short form content, 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm asked Mr. Michael, then Robert, then Meredith. So the question being, what are the opportunities that lie for a lot of the content producers here who want to get into the VOD market? But what are the opportunities?
Yeah, I think based on my experience with YouTube, if you look I think in a nutshell, I think I would say know your audience, and then sometimes it is possible to actually create something for which even your audience didn't think that they would so much richly engage with it. So I'll just give, maybe I would say in Kenya, for example, the top YouTubers are like the Churchill Show. Nyashiski recently also got to over 100,000 subscribers. Also Desperate Housewives of Kawangware, not of LA. Jugush also, very top on the YouTube leading channels. And also a lot of channels on beauty and makeup, especially for ladies. But interestingly also, one of the leading YouTube channels in Kenya is a channel by James Nduruchi, who is leading a campaign to eradicate jiggers, or sand flea, as other countries may call them. And some of these videos are a little graphic because they show jiggers being removed from somebody's store. And for some reason, it's one of the top YouTube channels. So you can never tell what's out there, and you can never tell what kind of content will resonate. But again, we also, like Patrick has said, educational content, especially for kids, very important. And you'll find that on the YouTube Kids app, actually the only channel that we have